Barbara, you're not even in our league anymore. My husband's words hung in the air like smoke I couldn't quite clear from my lungs. I stood there in the doorway of his home office, our home office, though I hadn't set foot in it for months, holding a tray of bourbon and ice. The kind he liked. Expensive. The kind I'd learned to pour exactly 3 fingers deep, 1 ice cube, because that's what a good wife does. She remembers, but Adam Winters didn't look up when he said it. He didn't even flinch. His eyes stayed fixed on Timothy Walsh, the hospital's chief operating officer, and Robert Kim, the head of cardiothoracic surgery. Both men shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs, suddenly very interested in the amber liquid in their glasses. It was our anniversary party, our 32nd. I'd spent 2 days preparing beef tenderloin with rosemary roasted Brussels sprouts with balsamic glaze, the salmon pâté everyone always raved about. The house smelled like success and celebration. 50 guests mingled in our Buckhead living room, admiring the crown molding I'd chosen, the art I'd hung the garden visible through the French doors that I'd planted with my own hands. And here was my husband in the room I'd decorated for him, telling his colleagues that I wasn't good enough anymore. I mean, look at the other wives. Adam continued, warming to his theme now. Diana is a federal prosecutor. Robert's wife just made partner at King & Spalding. Even Timothy's wife runs that nonprofit that pulled in $2 million last year. And me, I bring a housewife to fundraisers who can't talk about anything except recipes and grandchildren we don't even have yet. Timothy cleared his throat. Adam, maybe? No, it's fine. They all know. I've been patient. But I'm 64 years old and I'm finally where I deserve to be. Chief of cardiovascular surgery. And I deserve a partner who fits that position. Someone who can hold a conversation about more than whether the chicken was too dry. My hands shook, just slightly. Enough that the ice in the bucket made a soft tinkling sound. None of them noticed. Robert Kim, to his credit, looked genuinely uncomfortable. When would you... what are you thinking? Adam leaned back in his chair. His chair. The one I'd reupholstered 3 years ago when the leather started to crack. After her 65th birthday, 15 months from now, it'll look better, like we gave it a real shot. Plus, by then I'll have the department running smoothly. The timing will be better for my reputation. He said it like he was discussing surgical scheduling. Clinical, precise. 32 years and I'd become a procedure to be planned around. And there's someone else, Timothy asked quietly. Adam's smile was small but unmistakable. Someone much better suited to my lifestyle. Younger, sharper. Someone who understands the kind of world I operate in now. That's when I stepped fully into the room. I didn't drop the tray. I didn't throw anything. I didn't cry. I simply walked forward, set the bourbon down on Adam's desk with a gentleness that surprised even me, and looked him directly in the eyes. You won't have to wait 15 months. His head snapped up. For the first time in what might have been years, I had Adam Winters' complete attention. Barbara, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. My voice was steady. It amazed me how steady it was. You've made everything very clear. And I agree we're not in the same league, so I'm leaving. Tonight. Timothy and Robert were frozen drinks halfway to their mouths. Don't be dramatic, Adam said, but I could see the panic starting to creep into his expression. You're overreacting to a private conversation. The party is still going, I interrupted. You should get back to your guests. They'll wonder where you are. I turned toward the door, then paused. And Adam, you're right. I never fit into your world. But maybe that's because I was too busy building the foundation you're standing on. I walked out of his office, down the hall, past the living room where 50 people were laughing and drinking wine I'd chosen, past my daughter Sarah, who was telling someone about her latest case, past my son Michael, who was showing photos of his startup's new office space on his phone. None of them saw me leave. I walked out the front door of the house I'd called home for 28 years, got into my car, and drove away from my life. The clock on the dashboard read 11:47 p.m. At 11:48, I pulled into a gas station and finally allowed myself to shake. At 11:52, I started driving toward the Marriott near the airport. At midnight, I checked into a room with nothing but my purse and the clothes on my back. And at 12:15 a.m., sitting on a bed in a hotel that smelled like industrial cleaner and other people's problems, I realized something extraordinary. I wasn't crying. I was free. I wasn't always invisible. Let me tell you about the woman I used to be before I became just Adam's wife. Before I became the person who remembered everyone's preferences and no one remembered mine. I met Adam Winters in 1992. I was 29, working as a nurse at Grady Memorial Hospital. Night shifts, mostly the kind where you see humanity at its most desperate and most beautiful. I loved it. The rush of the ER, the way time moved differently under fluorescent lights, the profound privilege of being present in people's most vulnerable moments. Adam was a surgical resident then. Brilliant, everyone said. And they were right. He had hands that never shook, even during his 30th hour without sleep. He had a memory that could hold 100 patient details simultaneously. He had ambition that radiated from him like heat. And for some reason, I'll never fully understand, he noticed me. Not because I was particularly beautiful. I was fine-looking, I suppose, in that forgettable way of women who work too hard to worry much about appearances. But I was good at my job. I was calm in crisis. And one night during a trauma that should have killed a 16-year-old boy but didn't, I handed Adam the instruments he needed before he asked for them. We were in perfect sync, moving through that surgery like dancers who'd rehearsed for years. Afterward, in the break room at 4 a.m., he bought me coffee from the vending machine and told me I had saved that boy's life as much as he had. I fell in love with him right there, exhausted and reeking of antiseptic, while rain drummed against the windows and someone's abandoned sandwich curled in the microwave. We were married 8 months later. Small ceremony, just family. My father walked me down the aisle, Henry Morrison, a carpenter and electrician who'd immigrated from England with nothing but his tools and his accent. Dad liked Adam well enough, though he pulled me aside before the ceremony and said something I didn't understand until much later. Just make sure he sees you, Barbie. Make sure he always sees you. At the time, I laughed. How could Adam not see me? We were in love. We were building a life together. We were young and stupid, and we thought love was enough. Sarah was born in 1995. I took 6 months off from nursing, then went back part-time. Adam was doing his fellowship, then working in human hours, living on adrenaline and coffee, and the promise of what his career could become. I didn't mind. I was young, too. I could handle the night shifts, the baby, the house, the endless logistics of a life that required constant maintenance. I was good at juggling. I was good at making things work. Then Adam got an offer. A position at Emory University Hospital. Better money, better opportunities, better everything. Except it was in Atlanta, and we were in Charleston. It's just a move, Adam said, already packing boxes in his mind. You can get a nursing job anywhere, but this is my shot, Barb. This is everything we've been working toward. So we moved. And yes, I could have found another nursing job, but Sarah was too. And Adam's hours got longer, not shorter. And someone had to be there to pick up our daughter from daycare, to make dinner, to remember the pediatrician appointments and the birthday parties and all the 1,000 tiny threads that keep a family from unraveling. So I became a stay-at-home mother. Temporarily, I told myself. Just until things settled down. Things never settled down. Michael was born in 1998. Adam made attending physician. We bought the house in Buckhead, the one with the bones, everyone said. The one with potential. The one that needed work. I did the work. I painted walls and refinished floors. I planted the garden that would eventually be featured in Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles. I learned to coordinate contractors and argue with city permits and host dinner parties where I made everything look effortless. I became good at effortless. I became so good at it that everyone forgot it was actually work. The thing about becoming invisible is that it doesn't happen all at once. It's not like you wake up one morning and discover you've disappeared. It's gradual. It's subtle. It's 1,000 tiny moments where someone looks through you instead of at you, and you tell yourself it doesn't matter. They're just busy. They're just stressed. And then one day you realize you can't remember the last time someone asked how you were doing and actually waited for the answer. It started around 2010, maybe. Adam had been promoted to director of the cardiac surgery program. He was traveling more conferences, speaking engagements, consultations with other hospitals. When he was home, he was tired. Distracted. Important people were calling at all hours. Important decisions needed to be made. And I was there in the background making sure he had clean shirts for his trips. Making sure he ate something before he left for the hospital at 5 a.m. Making sure the house ran smoothly so he never had to think about it. I started to notice how he introduced me at events. This is my wife, Barbara. Never this is Barbara. Always my wife, as if that was my entire identity. As if I had no name, no history, no existence outside of my relationship to him. I started to notice how conversations died when I approached. Not because people were rude, but because I had nothing to contribute. What did I know about hospital politics? About surgical innovations, about anything that mattered in Adam's world? I knew how to get red wine out of white linen. I knew which caterer in Atlanta made the best spanakopita. I knew the names of everyone's children and what they were studying in school. But that wasn't knowledge that counted. The children grew up in this house. Sarah learned to ride her bike on this driveway. Michael built elaborate Lego cities on the living room floor, cities that would stay up for weeks because I couldn't bear to dismantle them. This kitchen with its marble counters, I'd chosen its Viking range I'd saved for Fed every milestone, every birthday, every celebration. I threw Sarah's engagement party here 2 years ago. 50 guests, seated dinner, everything perfect. She looked beautiful in her navy dress ring, catching the light as she gestured while talking to her future in-laws. I stood in the kitchen making sure the caterers had everything they needed and overheard her talking to a friend. Mom's so good at this stuff. She's like a professional hostess or something. Not pride in her voice, not admiration, just statement of fact, like I was hired help who happened to share her DNA. Michael lived at home for a year after college, paying minimal rent while his startup got off the ground. I made his meals, did his laundry, made sure he had everything he needed. When he moved out, he texted, "Thanks for everything, Mom. House looks great, by the way." The house. Not me. The house. I want you to understand something. I'm not telling you this so make you feel sorry for me. I'm not a victim, or at least I don't want to be. But I need you to understand what 32 years of this does to a person. How it hollows you out slowly, imperceptibly. How you start to measure your worth by how smoothly everyone else's life runs. How you start to believe that your purpose is to be useful, not to be loved. How you start to forget that there's a difference. My father understood this. When he died 6 years ago, 82 years old, still fixing things with his own hands until the heart attack took him in his workshop, I was devastated. Not just because I'd lost him, but because I realized he'd been the only person who still saw me as a whole human being. Dad never had much money. He lived modestly in a small house in Decatur, fixing other people's electrical problems and building custom furniture that he sold for far less than it was worth. At his funeral, people told stories about how he'd helped them. Rewired their houses, built them bookshelves, refused to accept payment from anyone who was struggling. He left me his house and some savings. Not much, I thought. Maybe $30,000, enough to cover the funeral and a little extra. I didn't know then what my father had really left me. I didn't know he'd been protecting me all along. The first night at the Marriott, I didn't sleep. I lay on top of the covers, making the bed felt like too much commitment to this surreal reality, and stared at the acoustic ceiling tiles. Someone in the next room was watching late-night television. A couple down the hall was arguing in muffled tones. Outside planes took off toward destinations I'd never seen, carrying people who probably had some idea of where they were going. I had no idea where I was going. At 3 a.m., my phone started buzzing. Adam. I didn't answer. Then Sarah. Then Michael. Then Adam again. Finally a text from Adam. "Barbara, this is ridiculous. Come home. We'll talk in the morning." As if I were a child having a tantrum. As if this were a misunderstanding that could be cleared up with a conversation and a good night's sleep. I turned off my phone and watched the sun come up over the parking lot. The next morning I drove to Target and bought clothes, underwear, toiletries, a cheap suitcase to put everything in. The young woman at the checkout looked at my pile of basics and asked if I was okay. I realized I must look like what I was, a woman fleeing something. "I'm fine," I told her, and managed to smile. "Just starting over." She scanned my items silently, then added a chocolate bar to the bag. "On the house," she said. "Everyone needs a little sweetness when they're starting over." I cried in the parking lot. Over a $1.29 Hershey bar. Over the kindness of a stranger who'd probably forget me in 5 minutes, but who'd really seen me in a way my own family hadn't for years. I checked out of the Marriott and found a small furnished apartment in Midtown. Month-to-month lease, no commitment required. It was nothing like the house in Buckhead. 1-bedroom, generic furniture, thin walls. The refrigerator hummed too loud. The bathroom faucet dripped. The view was of another building's brick wall. It was perfect. For the first time in 32 years, no one needed me to be anywhere or do anything. There was no dinner to plan, no schedule to coordinate, no one to anticipate or accommodate. The silence was terrifying. The silence was everything. Sarah called on day 3. I turned my phone back on stupidly, thinking maybe she was worried about me. "Mom, what the hell is going on? No, how are you? No, are you okay?" Just anger. Dad says you just walked out in the middle of your anniversary party. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? I was standing in my tiny new kitchen making coffee in a Mr. Coffee that had come with the apartment. I overheard your father telling his colleagues that he's going to leave me, I said calmly. That I'm not good enough for him anymore. That he's just waiting for the right time. A pause. Then, Mom, you obviously misunderstood. Dad would never... I didn't misunderstand Sarah. He was very clear. He has someone else. Someone who fits his life better. Another pause. Longer this time. Well, I mean, Mom, you have to understand. Dad works incredibly hard. He's under tremendous pressure. And you don't really do anything, do you? Maybe he needs someone who can actually be a partner in his professional life, not just someone who hosts dinner parties. I set down my coffee. My hand was shaking, but my voice remained steady. I raised you, I said quietly. I gave up my career to move 3 times for your father's job. I was there for every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every time you needed anything. I built the home you grew up in. And that's nothing. That's what mothers do, Sarah said as if it were obvious. That's not a career. That's just being a mom. I see, I said. Thank you for clarifying. Mom, don't be dramatic. Just come home. Apologize to Dad. Work this out like adults. You're going to ruin everything over nothing. I have to go, I said. I'm sure you have important things to do. I hung up before she could respond. Michael called later that day. I let it go to voicemail. His message was shorter, more emotional than Sarah's controlled anger. Mom, please. I don't know what happened, but Dad's a mess. We're all worried about you. This isn't like you. Can we talk? Can we meet for coffee or something? Please call me back. At least he'd said he was worried about me. That was something. I called him back. We met at a Starbucks in Virginia Highland Neutral Territory. Michael looked tired, my baby boy 27 now with Adam's features in my eyes. He hugged me carefully as if I might break. Mom, what's going on? He ordered us both coffee. He remembered I liked vanilla lattes and sat across from me genuinely concerned. Dad says you just left. Sarah says you're talking about divorce. This came out of nowhere. It didn't come out of nowhere, I said. I've been disappearing for years. You just didn't notice. He frowned. That's not fair. You're right, I agreed. It's not fair, but it's true. I told him what I'd overheard, what his father had said about me, about my worth, about his plans. Michael listened, his coffee growing cold between his hands. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Mom, he finally said. Maybe Dad was just venting. Men say things they don't mean when they're drinking with other men. It's not always literal. He was very literal, I said. He has a timeline. He has someone else. This wasn't venting. This was planning. But Mom, you've been together 32 years. You can't just throw that away over one conversation. I'm not throwing it away, I said. Your father already did that. I'm just acknowledging reality. He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. So what, you're just going to leave? Start over at your age. You don't have a job. You don't have income. You're going to struggle. Mom, is that really worth it? Is your pride really more important than practical reality? My pride. As if pride were a luxury I couldn't afford. As if dignity were something I should be willing to negotiate away for financial security. I'd rather struggle with my self-respect intact than live comfortably as someone's burden, I said. You're not a burden. That's exactly what I am, I interrupted. To your father, and apparently to you and Sarah as well. I'm the woman who doesn't do anything. I'm the embarrassment at fundraisers. I'm the mother who's just being a mom, as if that's the minimum requirement rather than everything I gave. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is, I said gently. You just don't realize how it sounds because you've never had to be on the receiving end of it. I stood up. Michael stood too, reaching for me. Mom, please, don't make this harder than it has to be. Just come home. Talk to Dad. I'm sure you can work this out. I love you, I told him. But I'm not coming home. That house isn't my home anymore. Maybe it never really was. I left him standing there in Starbucks looking lost in a way that made my heart hurt. But I kept walking. The calls and texts continued for days. Adam increasingly angry. Sarah increasingly frustrated, Michael increasingly worried. A chorus of voices telling me I was wrong. I was overreacting. I was making a mistake. Not one of them asking if I was okay. Not one of them saying they loved me and wanted me to be happy. Just concern about the inconvenience my absence created, about the embarrassment, about the disruption to their lives. I stopped answering. On day 7 of my new life, I received an email from a law office, Hamilton and Associates. The subject line read, "Regarding the estate of Henry Morrison, my father, who'd been gone for 6 years. Why was I hearing from his estate lawyer now?" The email was brief. "Dear Mrs. Winters, we need to meet regarding assets from your father's estate that require your attention. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience." I stared at the email confused. Dad's estate had been settled years ago. What could possibly need my attention now? I called the number. A receptionist with a warm Southern accent connected me to Patricia Hamilton. We scheduled a meeting for the following afternoon. I had no idea that everything was about to change. I had no idea that my father, even from beyond the grave, was still protecting me. I had no idea that I wasn't nearly as helpless as everyone, including myself, had believed. Patricia Hamilton's office was on the 18th floor of a building on Peachtree Street. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Atlanta skyline. The furniture was expensive but comfortable. Original art on the walls. The kind of office that announced competence without being intimidating. Patricia herself was in her mid-50s, African-American, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in an elegant chignon. She stood when I entered, shook my hand with a firm grip, and gestured to a chair across from her desk. "Mrs. Winters, thank you for coming. I know this must be confusing." "I don't understand," I said. "My father's estate was settled years ago. I thought everything was finalized." Patricia smiled. It was a kind smile, knowing. The smile of someone who'd seen women like me before and understood exactly what we'd been through. "Your father's estate was settled in terms of his immediate assets, his house, his personal belongings, his small savings account. But there was another component, a trust, one that he established separately and wanted kept private until certain conditions were met." "What conditions?" "Until you needed it," Patricia said simply. "Your father was very specific. He wanted to make sure you had something that was entirely yours, something that couldn't be compromised." She pulled out a folder, thick, official-looking. "Mrs. Winters, may I call you Barbara?" I nodded. "Barbara, your father was a very wise man, and he was much wealthier than anyone knew." I must have looked confused because she continued. "For 40 years, your father quietly invested in real estate. He bought modest properties, houses that needed work, and fixed them himself. Then he rented them out. He lived simply, so simply that no one suspected he was building a substantial portfolio." She opened the folder. Inside were property deeds, 7 of them. "Over the course of his life, your father acquired 7 properties in the Atlanta area. They're all paid off, they're all currently generating rental income, and they're all in a trust with you as the sole beneficiary." I couldn't breathe. "The total current value of these properties," Patricia continued, "is approximately $4.2 million. The office spun. I gripped the armrests of my chair. "That can't be right," I whispered. "My father was a carpenter, an electrician. He lived in a tiny house in Decatur." "He did," Patricia agreed. "Because he was saving, building, protecting, and he never told anyone, not even you, because he wanted to make sure this money stayed separate, protected." She pulled out an envelope, old, sealed, my name written on it in my father's distinctive handwriting. "He left this for you, to be opened when you finally learned about the trust." My hands shook as I took the envelope. The paper was thick, quality stationery. I opened it carefully, unfolded the letter inside. "My dearest Barbie, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and it means Patricia has told you about the properties. It also means, and this is what breaks my heart, that you need them. I've watched you love. I've watched you make yourself smaller and smaller to fit into Adam's life. I've watched you give up your dreams, your career, your very self, because you thought that's what love required. It doesn't. Love doesn't ask you to disappear. Love doesn't ask you to be useful instead of cherished. Real love sees you, all of you, and celebrates what it finds. I never liked Adam. I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. I saw how he looked at you, not at you really, but at what you could do for him. I saw how he talked over you at dinner, how he made decisions without consulting you, how he took credit for the life you built together. But I also knew you loved him, and I respected your choices. I just wanted to make sure you always had a choice. That's what this money is, not a fortune perhaps, but choices, options, a foundation that belongs to you alone. When I started buying properties, it was just one house, a fixer-upper in East Point that needed new wiring and plumbing. I could do the work myself, so I did. Then I rented it out. The income was good. I bought another, then another. I put them all in a trust so they'd be separate from any marital property, so that if you ever needed them, if you ever needed to be free, you'd have the means. I hope you never need this letter. I hope you're reading it out of curiosity, happily married, surrounded by a family that treats you like the treasure you are. But if you're reading it because you're alone, because you're hurting, because you finally realize that you deserve better than what you've been accepting, then I want you to know you are not dependent. You are not helpless. You are not starting from nothing. You are my daughter, and I have been preparing for this moment since the day I watched Adam look through you at our first Christmas dinner together. Be brave, Barbie. Be fierce. Be the woman you were before you started apologizing for existing. And remember, a house is just wood and nails until someone makes it a home. You've been making homes for everyone else. Now make one for yourself. All my love. Dad. I read the letter 3 times. Tears ran down my face and dripped onto my lap, but I didn't wipe them away. I just held my father's words and felt something I hadn't felt in years, hope. Not hope that things would go back to normal. Not hope that Adam would realize what he'd lost. Not hope that my children would suddenly understand. Hope that I could survive this. That I could more than survive. I could thrive. He knew, I whispered. He knew it would come to this. I think he suspected, Patricia said gently, and he wanted to make sure you'd be okay when it did. I looked at the property list. 7 addresses. 7 homes that my father had built and maintained with his own hands. 7 pieces of real estate that represented not just money, but my father's love translated into action, into protection, into possibility. One of the properties was his house in Decatur, the small, modest place where I'd grown up, worth $450,000 now in Atlanta's hot market. The others were scattered across metro Atlanta, a duplex in East Point, a 3-bedroom in College Park, a ranch in Forest Park, a 2-story near Chamblee, close to the university, a condo in Sandy Springs, and most valuable of all, 2 acres of undeveloped land in Roswell, now worth $1.24 million. All of it mine. All of it separate property that Adam had no claim to. All of it my father's final gift, freedom. I don't understand the timing, I said finally. Why now? Why not when he died 6 years ago? Patricia smiled that knowing smile again. Because the trust had specific conditions. The first was that the properties had to be managed by a trustee, me, until you either reached age 65 or until you filed for divorce, or until you came to me seeking help for any reason that indicated you were leaving your marriage. Your father wanted to make sure these assets stayed protected, that they didn't accidentally become marital property through any kind of commingling. Smart. My father, who everyone underestimated because he worked with his hands, had been brilliant. And the second condition, I asked, that when you learned about the trust, I was to offer you my services as a divorce attorney, free of charge. Your father set aside funds specifically to cover any legal costs you might incur. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all, my husband planning to divorce me in 15 months, not knowing that I had the means to leave him immediately, that I had a secret weapon in the form of my father's love and foresight. Did my father really think of everything? He tried, Patricia said. He asked me to also recommend a private investigator if you needed one, a good accountant, a financial advisor who specializes in helping women establish independence. He wanted to make sure you had resources, Barbara, not just money, but a whole support system. I sat back in the chair, overwhelmed. My father, gone for 6 years, was still taking care of me, still seeing me when everyone else looked through me. There's one more thing, Patricia said. She pulled out a small box from her desk drawer. He wanted you to have this. Inside was a key, old brass worn smooth with age. Attached to it was a small tag with my father's handwriting for the door you choose to open. And that's when I made my decision. Not to go back to Adam, not to try to fix what was broken, not to make myself smaller in the hope that he'd love me again, but to walk through a door of my own choosing, to build a life on the foundation my father had given me, to finally stop being invisible. Patricia, I said, my voice steady and clear, I'd like to file for divorce, and I'd like to hire a private investigator, because I have a feeling my husband has been hiding more than just his contempt for me. Patricia's smile widened. I was hoping you'd say that. I know just the person. She picked up her phone and started dialing, and I sat there holding my father's key, feeling something shift inside me, something fundamental and permanent. I wasn't Barbara Winter's desperate wife anymore. I wasn't even Barbara Morrison trying to reclaim who I used to be. I was someone new, someone who'd been forged in 32 years of being overlooked, undervalued, and forgotten. Someone who'd learned exactly how strong you have to be to hold together a life that's falling apart. Someone who was done being strong for everyone but herself. The old Barbara would have gone home and apologized, would have tried to fix things, would have blamed herself for not being enough. The new Barbara was going to war, and she had $4.2 million worth of ammunition her enemy didn't even know existed. Vincent Taylor arrived at Patricia's office 30 minutes after her call. He was not what I expected. I'd imagined a private investigator would look like someone from a noir film, weathered cynical, maybe wearing a trench coat despite the Atlanta heat. Instead, Vincent was entirely ordinary. Medium height, medium build, sandy brown hair going gray at the temples. He wore khakis and a button-down shirt. He looked like someone's accountant or a high school history teacher, or literally anyone you'd pass on the street and immediately forget, which Patricia explained was exactly why he was so good at his job. "Mrs. Winters," he said, shaking my hand with a grip that was firm but not aggressive. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Call me Barbara." I was getting tired of being Mrs. Winters. That name belonged to someone I didn't want to be anymore. Vincent sat down and pulled out a leather portfolio, worn but well-maintained, like everything about him suggested careful attention without flash. Patricia briefed me on the basics. 32-year marriage. You overheard your husband planning to leave you. You're filing for divorce, and you suspect there's more going on than just a midlife crisis. I don't suspect, I said, CIA said. I know. Adam wouldn't plan a divorce timeline unless he had his affairs in order, literally and figuratively. Vincent smiled slightly. You'd be surprised how often people make major life decisions without proper planning. But you're right to be cautious. Men in your husband's position, successful, well-connected, financially comfortable, often have layers of, let's call them contingency plans. He opened his portfolio and pulled out a form. I'm going to need you to tell me everything. And I mean everything. Details that seem irrelevant, things that embarrass you, suspicions you think might be paranoid. In my experience, gut feelings are usually based on patterns we notice subconsciously but can't articulate. So I told him everything. I told him about the work trips that had increased over the past 3 years, the late-night calls Adam took in his office with the door closed, the new cologne he'd started wearing last year, something expensive and different from what he'd worn for decades, the way he'd updated his entire wardrobe, trading his usual conservative suits for more fashionable cuts. I told him about the separate bank account I'd discovered by accident 2 years ago when a statement was delivered to the house. Adam had said it was for investments and told me not to worry about it. Like a fool, I hadn't. I told him about Melissa Harper. Wait, Vincent held up a hand. You know her name? She used to work at Adam's practice. Administrative assistant or something. She left about 18 months ago. I paused, remembering. Adam mentioned it casually one night. Said they'd had to let someone go due to budget restructuring. But I remember thinking it was odd, because he seemed, I don't know, affected by it. Like it mattered more than it should have. Vincent was writing quickly now. Do you remember her last name? Harper, Melissa Harper. She was young, late 20s maybe, blonde. I felt a twist in my stomach saying it out loud, making it real. Good, Vincent said, and I realized he meant it was good information, not good that my husband was likely sleeping with a woman half my age. That gives me somewhere to start. What else? I told him about the phone calls I'd occasionally answered when Adam was in the shower or outside. Hang-ups mostly. A few times a woman's voice asking for Adam, then quickly saying she'd call back. I'd thought it was work-related. You weren't paranoid, Patricia interjected. You were paying attention. There's a difference. I told him about the credit card I didn't have access to. Adam had gotten it 2 years ago, said it was for business expenses to keep things clean for taxes. I'd accepted that explanation because I'd accepted everything. Do you know which bank? Vincent asked. SunTrust, I think. Now Truist. More notes. What about his schedule? Any patterns to when he's home late or travels? I thought about it. Tuesdays and Fridays he usually gets home around 8 or 9 instead of 6, says he has board meetings or consultations, and he travels maybe once a month, medical conferences, he says. Does he bring home conference materials, badges, programs, that kind of thing? I frowned. Not that I've noticed. Interesting. Vincent looked up at me. Barbara, I'm going to be direct with you. Everything you've described follows a classic pattern of extramarital affair combined with financial preparation for divorce. The separate accounts, the changed schedule, the physical changes, the mysterious woman. If I were betting, I'd say your husband has been planning this for at least 2 years, maybe longer. My hands clenched in my lap. How do we prove it? We follow the money, Vincent said simply. And we follow him. Money leaves trails. People leave patterns. Your husband thinks you're not paying attention, which means he's probably gotten sloppy. He closed his portfolio. I charge $150 an hour plus expenses. This kind of case typically runs 2 to 3 weeks if the subject is actively having an affair. I'll need a retainer of $5,000. I looked at Patricia. She nodded. Your father's trust covers this, Barbara. He wanted you to have whatever resources you needed. Do it, I said to Vincent. Find everything. I will, he promised. But Barbara, you need to be prepared. Whatever I find, it's probably going to be worse than you imagine. It almost always is. 3 days later, Vincent called me to Patricia's office again. This time there was a third person waiting, a woman in her early 50s with sharp eyes behind designer glasses and an air of barely contained intensity. Barbara, this is Karen Phillips, Vincent said. She's a forensic accountant, one of the best in the Southeast. Karen shook my hand with the kind of grip that suggested she could probably bench press me if necessary. Mrs. Winters Vincent brought me in because what he's finding requires specialized analysis. I've been reviewing your family's financial records, the ones that are public or that you have access to. She opened a laptop and turned it toward me. Spreadsheets, numbers. My eyes started to glaze over. I know this looks overwhelming, Karen said, her voice surprisingly gentle. So let me break it down simply. Your family's financial picture has 3 layers. What you can see, what your husband thinks is hidden, and what's actually hidden. We're working on uncovering layers 2 and 3. What can I see? I asked. Karen pulled up a document. Your joint checking account currently has $47,000. Your joint savings has $23,000. You have about $70,000 in immediately accessible funds. That seemed like a lot to me, but Karen's expression said otherwise. Your husband makes approximately $450,000 a year, correct? I think so. He handles all the finances. And you've been married 32 years. You live in a $1.2 million house with only $300,000 left on the mortgage. Your children are educated and independent. You don't have expensive hobbies or addictions. So where's the money? I blinked. I don't know. Exactly, Karen said. By my conservative estimate, your household should have accumulated at least $2 million in liquid assets over the past 3 decades, even accounting for living expenses, raising children, and moderate lifestyle inflation. You have $70,000, so the question is, where's the other $1.93 million? My stomach dropped. Adam said he invested it. In the practice, in retirement accounts. Let's talk about the practice, Vincent interjected. He pulled out his own file. Your husband is in partnership with Dr. Gregory Shaw. They co-own Peachtree Cardiovascular Surgery. I did some digging, called in a favor with someone who does medical billing. The practice is very successful. Grossed about $3.2 million last year. That's good, I asked. That's excellent, Karen said. Split between 2 partners minus overhead, your husband should be taking home his $450,000 salary plus approximately $200,000 in partnership distributions annually. But when I look at your tax returns for the past 5 years, she pulled up another document. He's only declaring the salary, no partnership income. What does that mean? Vincent and Karen exchanged a look. It means, Vincent said carefully, that either the practice isn't as profitable as it appears, or your husband is hiding partnership income, or he's siphoning money from the practice. None of those options are good. There's more, Karen added. She pulled up another spreadsheet. I found a company registered in Delaware called Cardio Wellness Investments, LLC. It was established 3 years ago. Guess who the sole proprietor is? Adam, I whispered. Adam, she confirmed. This company has a business bank account at Truist, the same bank you mentioned, and over the past 3 years, this account has received approximately $480,000 in transfers. From where? That's what I'm still working on, but based on the amounts and timing, I suspect it's from the practice. Small transfers, $2,000 to $5,000 at a time every few weeks. Too small to trigger automatic reporting thresholds, but over time they add up. I felt sick. He's been stealing from his own practice. Potentially, Karen said. Or he could argue it's legitimate business expenses or deferred compensation. That's why we need more information. But Barbara, $480,000 is a lot of money to hide from your spouse. That's not forgetting to mention a bonus. That's deliberate concealment. What else? I asked because I could tell they were building to something. Vincent pulled out a folder. Photos. Surveillance photos. I've been following your husband for the past 3 days, he said. Tuesday and Friday evenings, just like you mentioned. He laid out the photos one by one. Adam leaving the hospital at 6:15 p.m. Adam driving not toward Buckhead, but toward a high-rise building in Midtown. Adam entering the building using a key fob. Adam emerging 2 hours later, sometimes 3, looking relaxed. Happy. And in several photos, Adam with a woman. Blonde, young, Melissa Harper. The last photo showed them kissing in the parking garage. I stared at the images. My husband of 32 years. The man I'd built a life with. Kissing another woman with the kind of easy affection that spoke of comfort, familiarity, intimacy. The building is called the Charles, Vincent continued, his voice gentle. Luxury condos. I checked the resident directory. Unit 1847 is leased under the name of Cardio Wellness Investments, LLC, I finished. The company. Yes. How much is the rent? $4,800 a month. I did the math in my head. $57,600 a year. For 3 years. That was over $170,000 just in rent, not counting utilities or furnishings. What else has he bought her? I asked. My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else. Vincent hesitated, then pulled out more documents. A 2024 Mercedes GLE, MSRP, around $78,000. Registered to the LLC, but insured with Melissa Harper as the primary driver. Various purchases at Tiffany & Company. Neiman Marcus and other upscale retailers totaling approximately $45,000 based on credit card statements I was able to access. Access? Patricia raised an eyebrow. Let's say I have contacts who owe me favors, Vincent said diplomatically. Everything I'm finding is technically legal to discover, though some methods might not be admissible in court. But for the purposes of building a case and knowing what we're dealing with, it's valuable information. I was still staring at the photos. At my husband kissing another woman, at the evidence of a life he'd built completely separate from me. How long? I asked. How long has this been going on? Based on when the LLC was established and when the condo lease started, at least 3 years, Vincent said. Possibly longer. The lease on the condo started in March 2022. 3 years. 3 years of lies. 3 years of coming home to me after being with her. 3 years of touching me with the same hands that touched her. I was going to be sick. Barbara, Patricia said softly, do you need a break? No, I said. I need you to tell me the rest. All of it. Don't spare me. Karen and Vincent looked at each other again. Then Karen spoke. There's an email thread Vincent was able to access. Between your husband and his personal attorney, not his practice attorney, a different lawyer. Discussing divorce strategy. When my voice cracked. The emails date back to January of this year. So 9 months ago. Karen pulled them up on her screen. Your husband was exploring options for minimizing what you'd receive in a divorce. The attorney advised him to continue transfers to the hidden account to avoid any large asset purchases in his name, and to wait at least another year before filing to establish a longer period of marital discord to justify the divorce. She scrolled to another email. This one is from March. Your husband writes, and I quote, I've told Melissa that we need to wait until Barbara turns 65. That gives me 15 months to ensure everything is properly positioned. Melissa is getting impatient, but I've convinced her that the wait will be worth it. Once Barbara is 65, I can claim she should be content with Social Security and Medicare, and that she doesn't need a large settlement. The age works in my favor. Rage, pure white-hot rage flooded through me. Not hurt that would come later. Right now, all I felt was fury. He'd calculated it, timed it, planned it down to the year based on my birthday, used my age as a weapon against me. What about his partner? I asked. Dr. Shaw. Does he know about the money Adam's taking? That's actually the interesting part, Vincent said. I've been doing background on Shaw. He's meticulous. Former military Navy doctor before going into private practice. Everything by the book. And recently he hired his own forensic accountant to review the practice finances. Why? Because he noticed discrepancies. Small ones at first, but they bothered him. So he hired someone to dig deeper. Vincent smiled slightly. That accountant is a colleague of Karen's. They've been sharing information. Karen nodded. Shaw doesn't know about the affair or the hidden condo, but he knows about the missing money. And he's not happy. He's preparing to confront your husband possibly as soon as next week. An idea formed. A terrible, perfect idea. Can you arrange for me to meet with Dr. Shaw? I asked. Before he confronts Adam. Patricia leaned forward. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that Dr. Shaw is about to discover his partner is a thief, and I'm about to divorce a man who's been planning to leave me destitute. We have common interests. I looked at Vincent. Can you arrange it quietly? I can try, Vincent said. But Barbara, what exactly are you planning? I'm planning to stop being the victim in my own life, I said. And I'm planning to make sure that when this divorce is finalized, Adam Winters realizes exactly what he lost and what it cost him. Over the next week, while Vincent worked on arranging a meeting with Dr. Shaw, I did something I should have done years ago. I investigated my husband. Not just his current activities, his past, his patterns, the man he'd become, and why. Patricia recommended a therapist. Not because you're broken, she said, but because you're about to go through something traumatic and you need support. The therapist's name was Dr. Evelyn Rodriguez. Her office was in a converted house in Candler Park, filled with plants and soft lighting and comfortable furniture that didn't feel clinical. She was perhaps 60, with gray hair. She wore natural and kind eyes that had clearly seen a lot of pain. Tell me about Adam, she said in our first session. Not the affair, not the money. Tell me about who he was when you met him, who he became. So I did. I told her about the ambitious resident who noticed a night shift nurse, about the man who could go 30 hours without sleep but never forgot a patient's name, about the surgeon whose hands never shook. He was brilliant, I said. Everyone said so, and he worked so hard. I admired that about him. What was his family like? Dr. Rodriguez asked. I paused. I realized I rarely thought about Adam's family. They'd been at our wedding, but they weren't close to us. Adam's father had died when Adam was in college. His mother had passed away about 10 years ago. He grew up poor, I said slowly. Rural South Carolina. His father worked in a textile mill. His mother cleaned houses. He got a full scholarship to college, then medical school. He used to talk about it sometimes early in our marriage, about how hard it was to be the poor kid among rich classmates, how he had to work as a janitor to pay for books, how he wore second-hand clothes and couldn't afford to go out with his classmates. That must have been difficult for him, Dr. Rodriguez said neutrally. It was, I agreed. He was determined to never be poor again, to never be looked down on. That's why he worked so hard. And when did that change from admirable ambition to something else? I thought about it. Maybe around 2005 he got hired at Emory, started making real money, started meeting other successful doctors, wealthy people. He bought his first expensive watch, started caring about labels, brands. I remembered something. There was a fundraiser, maybe 2007 or 2008, for the hospital. All the major donors and doctors and administrators. Black tie event. I wore a dress I'd found on sale at Nordstrom Rack. I thought it was beautiful. But that night Adam kept introducing me to people and then steering me away quickly, like he was embarrassed. Did you ask him about it? Not then, but later he said something about how I needed to dress more appropriately for his position. He wanted me to hire a stylist, to get my hair done at an expensive salon, to look the part of a successful surgeon's wife. And did you? I tried, I said, but it felt wrong, like I was wearing a costume, and it was never enough anyway. The other wives were lawyers, doctors, entrepreneurs. They had things to talk about, cases they were working on, deals they were making. I had recipes and PTA meetings. Dr. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. Then she said gently, "Barbara, I'm going to suggest something that might be difficult to hear. Is that okay?" I nodded. "I think Adam fell in love with you when he was still that poor boy from South Carolina, when he still remembered what it was like to be powerless. You represented goodness, steadiness home. But as he became more successful, as he entered circles where status and image matter, he started to see you the way he feared others might see him as not enough. And instead of protecting you from that judgment, he internalized it. He became the person who judged you." Tears pricked my eyes. "So it's not that I changed. It's that his perception of what was valuable changed." "Exactly. You were always enough, Barbara. He just started measuring worth by the wrong metrics. And in doing so, he lost sight of what actually mattered." "Why didn't I see it?" I asked. "Why did I let it happen?" "Because you loved him," Dr. Rodriguez said simply. "And because women of your generation were taught that love means sacrifice, that being a good wife means making yourself smaller so your husband can be bigger. You did what you were taught to do. And now I'm 62 and starting over," I said bitterly. "No," Dr. Rodriguez corrected. "Now you're 62 and choosing yourself. That's not starting over. That's finally beginning." Vincent called on a Friday afternoon. I set up the meeting with Dr. Shaw. Tomorrow 10 a.m. at a coffee shop in Decatur. Neutral territory. He's curious, but cautious. "Did you tell him why I want to meet?" "I told him you're Adam's wife and that you have information he needs to hear. That's all." I spent that night preparing. Not just gathering documents, Vincent and Karen had compiled those, but preparing mentally. Rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd present myself. The next morning I dressed carefully. Not the old Barbara who faded into the background. Not trying to be someone I wasn't. Just myself. A tailored pantsuit I'd bought with my father's money. Minimal jewelry. Hair simply styled. Comfortable shoes. I looked in the mirror and saw something I hadn't seen in years. A woman who took up space. Who didn't apologize for existing. Dr. Gregory Shaw was already at the coffee shop when I arrived, sitting at a corner table. He was in his late 50s, tall with graying hair cut military short, and eyes that assessed me immediately. Not rudely, but thoroughly. This was a man who noticed things. "Mrs. Winters," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Thank you for meeting me. I'll admit I'm intrigued." "Call me Barbara." I sat down, declined coffee. My hands were shaking enough already, and pulled out the folder Patricia had prepared. "Dr. Shaw, I'm going to be direct. I'm filing for divorce from my husband, and in the process of investigating his assets, my team has discovered that he's been stealing from your practice." Shaw's expression didn't change, but I saw his jaw tighten slightly. "Stealing is a strong word." "It's an accurate word," I said. I opened the folder and showed him Karen's analysis. The shell company, the systematic transfers, the hidden account. Shaw studied the documents silently. When he looked up, his eyes were hard. I suspected something was wrong. That's why I hired an accountant, but I didn't realize the scope. "There's more," I said. I showed him the evidence of the condo, the car, Melissa Harper, the expenditures that could only have come from practice funds. "He's been supporting his mistress with money from the practice," I said, "for 3 years. The condo lease alone is nearly $58,000 a year. Add the car, the gifts, the expenses. He's siphoned off close to $500,000, possibly more." Shaw's knuckles were white around his coffee cup. "That son of a bitch." "I need to know something," I said. "When you confront him, and I assume you will, what are you planning to do?" "I'm planning to dissolve the partnership," Shaw said immediately. "File a lawsuit for the stolen funds, report him to the medical board for financial misconduct, end his career if I have to." "What if I asked you to wait?" I said. "Just a few weeks, until my divorce proceedings are underway." Shaw frowned. "Why?" "Because if you move first, Adam will lawyer up immediately. He'll hide what's left of the money. He'll claim it was all legitimate business expenses. He'll fight you, and it will take years to resolve." I leaned forward. But if you let me file for divorce first, if you let my forensic accountant dig deeper, we can build an airtight case. And when you do confront him, you'll have everything you need to destroy him." "You want revenge," Shaw said. "Not judgmental, just observational." "I want justice," I corrected. "There's a difference. Adam planned to leave me destitute. He calculated down to my birthday when he could file for divorce and minimize what I'd receive. He stole from you to fund his affair. He deserves to face consequences for all of it." Shaw was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What do you need from me?" "Information. Access to practice financial records that you have. And when the time comes, I need you to testify. In my divorce proceeding and in court if necessary." "You're asking me to betray my partner." "No," I said. "He betrayed you. I'm asking you to hold him accountable." Shaw smiled grimly. "Fair point." He pulled out his phone. "Give me your attorney's contact information. I'll have my accountant coordinate with yours. And Mrs. Winters." Barbara, I'm sorry this happened to you. For what it's worth, Adam used to talk about you. Years ago when we first became partners. He said you were the reason he made it through residency, that you believed in him when no one else did." My throat tightened. "That was a long time ago." "Yes," Shaw agreed. "It was. He changed. Not all at once. Gradually. He became someone I didn't fully recognize anymore. Someone more concerned with appearance than substance." He stood offering his hand again. "Let's make sure he faces what he's become." I shook his hand. "Thank you, Dr. Shaw." "Gregory," he said. "If we're taking down Adam together, first names seem appropriate." The phone calls from my children had tapered off after the first week. Sarah sent occasional texts asking if I was done with this nonsense yet. Michael called every few days, sounding increasingly worried. I hadn't told them anything about what I was discovering. Part of me wanted to protect them from the truth about their father. Part of me was just too tired to deal with their disbelief. But on a Sunday morning, 3 weeks after I'd left, Michael showed up at my apartment. I'd just finished making coffee. Real coffee in a French press I'd bought for myself because I actually preferred it to drip something I'd never mentioned to Adam, who insisted on his expensive espresso machine when there was a knock on my door. Michael looked terrible. Unshaven circles under his eyes, wearing rumpled clothes like he'd slept in them. "Mom," he said, and his voice broke. "Can we talk?" I let him in. He looked around my tiny apartment, so different from the Buckhead house, and something in his expression cracked. "You're really not coming back," he said. Not a question. "No," I confirmed. "I'm not. Dad's a mess. He's not sleeping. He's barely eating. He keeps calling me asking if I've heard from you." Michael sat heavily on my second-hand sofa. "Mom, I don't understand. How did we get here? You and Dad always seemed fine." "We seemed fine," I agreed. "But seeming and being are different things." "So talk to me," Michael said. "Help me understand. Because right now all I see is my family falling apart, and I don't know why." I sat down across from him, and for the first time I told one of my children the truth. I told him about what I'd overheard at the party. Not just the words, but the context, the tone, the casual cruelty of it. I told him about Melissa Harper, about the condo, the car, the 3-year affair funded with money that should have been family money. I told him about the emails where his father discussed divorce strategy, like I was a business problem to be minimized. I showed him some of the evidence, not all of it, but enough. The photos of Adam with Melissa, the financial records showing the hidden account. Michael's face went through a series of expressions: disbelief, denial, recognition, and finally devastation. 3 years, he whispered. He's been lying to all of us for 3 years. At least, I said gently. And the money? Jesus, Mom. He was planning to screw you over in the divorce. Yes. Michael stood abruptly, pacing my small living room. I can't believe Dad would do this. This isn't the man I thought I knew. It's exactly the man you know, I said. You just haven't been on the receiving end of it. Your father loves you, Michael. I believe that. But he loves you because you reflect well on him. You're successful. You're building something. You're useful to his image. That's not fair. It's completely fair, I interrupted. Think about how he talks about you, about your startup, your success, your potential. Now think about how he talks about me, or doesn't talk about me. When was the last time your father introduced me as something other than my wife? When was the last time he mentioned something I did? Something I achieved, something about me as a person rather than my function in his life? Michael opened his mouth, closed it, thought about it. I can't remember. Exactly, I said. Because to your father, I'm not a person anymore. I'm a role. And I've stopped performing that role to his satisfaction, so he's replacing me with someone who will. What are you going to do? Michael asked quietly. I'm going to divorce him. I'm going to make sure I get what I'm legally entitled to, and then I'm going to build a life that's mine. Do you need money I can help? I don't need your money, I said gently. I have money. Your grandfather left me very well provided for. Michael blinked. Grandpa Henry, but he was just a carpenter. Your grandfather was a very smart investor, I said, and he made sure I'd be taken care of. He saw what I didn't want to see, that I needed an escape route. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Michael said, I'm sorry, Mom. I should have listened when you first tried to tell me. I should have believed you. You wanted to believe in your family, I said. That's not wrong. It just made you blind to what was actually happening. What about Sarah? He asked. Have you talked to her? I shook my head. She's made her position clear. She thinks I'm being dramatic and selfish. She doesn't know, Michael said. She doesn't know about any of this, does she? About Melissa, about the money? No. She needs to know, Michael said firmly. I'll talk to her. Michael. No, Mom. She needs to hear this. Maybe not from you, maybe she's not ready to listen to you. But from me. From someone she'll believe. He stood. I need to go. I need to process all this. But Mom, yes. I'm proud of you. For leaving, for fighting back. I didn't understand it before, but I do now. He hugged me tightly. You deserved so much better than what Dad gave you. After he left, I cried. Not from sadness, though there was that too, but from relief. From the lightness of being believed, of being seen. One child down, one to go. Vincent called 3 days later. I have something you need to hear. I met him at Patricia's office. This was becoming routine, the three of us around Patricia's conference table, evidence mounting, strategy forming. I got access to Adam's email, Vincent said without preamble. Not legally admissible, but informative. How did you? Patricia started. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to, Vincent said with a slight smile. Let's just say your husband uses very obvious passwords, Barbara. His medical license number, not exactly sophisticated. He pulled up his laptop and turned it toward me. An email thread between Adam and someone named Benjamin Foster. Foster is a divorce attorney, Patricia explained. High-end. Expensive. Known for representing wealthy men in contested divorces. I read the emails. Each one made me angrier. January 15th, 2025, Benjamin. I need to start planning for divorce. My wife doesn't know yet. What do I need to do to protect my assets? January 18th. 2025. Adam. Start moving liquid assets to accounts in your name only. Legitimate business accounts are best. Don't make large purchases or investments. Document any spending by your wife that seems excessive. We'll use that to argue she's accustomed to financial irresponsibility. February 3rd, 2025. Benjamin, regarding your question about timeline, I advise waiting until after your wife turns 65. At that age, we can argue she should be satisfied with Social Security and Medicare. It significantly reduces potential alimony claims. February 5th, 2025. Adam, perfect. That gives me about 15 months. My girlfriend is getting impatient, but I can manage her expectations. March 20th, 2025. Benjamin, document everything. Every time your wife doesn't attend a work function. Every time she declines to socialize with your colleagues. We'll build a case that she failed to support your career advancement. April 8th, 2025. Adam, she doesn't even realize how checked out she's become. Last week I mentioned a major surgery and she barely responded. Too focused on her garden or whatever. It'll be easy to show she stopped being a partner years ago. I wanted to throw the laptop across the room. He's been documenting me, I said. Building a case. Making me into the villain. He's been trying, Patricia corrected. But here's the thing, discovery goes both ways. Every document he has that supposedly shows you were a bad wife. We can counter with evidence of his affair, his theft, his deception. And Barbara courts don't look kindly on spouses who systematically hide assets in preparation for divorce. What's our next move? I asked. Patricia smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the smile of an attorney who'd found their opponent's weakness. We file, she said. We file for divorce, and we do it with a full accounting of every asset we've discovered. We hit him with everything at once. We name Melissa Harper as a co-respondent in the affair. We include Gregory Shaw's statement about the practice theft. We bury him in evidence before he even knows what's happening. He'll lawyer up immediately, I said. He already has, Vincent pointed out. But here's what he doesn't know we know about Benjamin Foster. We know their strategy. And more importantly, we have evidence he doesn't think exists. Karen, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. I've completed my full analysis. Between the hidden accounts, the practice theft, and the expenditures on his mistress Adam, has misappropriated approximately $650,000 of what should be marital assets. That doesn't count the money he spent on himself, the trips, the clothes, the expensive watches I found evidence of. That's another $100,000 at least. $750,000, I said numbly. $750,000 that should have been invested in your joint future, Karen corrected. That's not just adultery, Barbara. That's financial fraud. And in Georgia, that matters. Patricia pulled up a calendar. Here's what I propose we file next Monday. That's 5 days from now. We serve him at the hospital, public, embarrassing, but effective. We file with a full asset disclosure and a motion to freeze all accounts pending forensic review. We request temporary support and full access to all financial records. He'll fight, I said. Of course he will, Patricia agreed. But here's what he'll be fighting against: documented proof of adultery, documented proof of financial fraud, the testimony of his business partner, and the fact that you came into this marriage with nothing and sacrificed your career for his. Georgia is an equitable distribution state, not a community property state. That means the judge has discretion. And judges hate people who hide assets. What should I expect? I asked. Expect him to be furious, Patricia said bluntly. Expect him to try to turn your children against you. Expect him to paint himself as the victim. Expect him to claim you're having some kind of breakdown. But also expect that we're going to win. Because we have the truth on our side, and we have evidence. Vincent closed his laptop. Barbara, there's one more thing you should know. I've been monitoring Melissa Harper's social media. She's been posting about apartment hunting, luxury places, talking about finally getting to start her real life. I think she expects Adam to move in with her once he's free. She has no idea what's coming, I said. Neither does he, Patricia said with satisfaction. And that's exactly how we want it. The night before Patricia filed the divorce papers, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my apartment bed firmer than the mattress at the Buckhead house, which Adam had chosen because he preferred it, and thought about everything that had led to this moment. 32 years, more than half my life, all ending with legal documents and accusations and the division of assets. Dr. Rodriguez had warned me about this. You'll grieve, she'd said in our last session, not for who Adam actually is, but for who you thought he was, for the life you thought you had. That's real grief, and it's valid. She was right. I was grieving. But I was also angry, and the anger was starting to outweigh the grief. I thought about my father, about how he'd worked in silence building a safety net I didn't know I needed, about how he'd understood years before I did that love wasn't always enough, that sometimes you needed leverage. Thank you, Dad, I thought. Thank you for seeing me when I'd stopped seeing myself. Monday morning arrived bright and clear. Autumn in Atlanta, the air finally cooling, leaves just starting to turn. A beautiful day for everything to change. Patricia called at 8:47 a.m. Papers are filed. Process server is on his way to the hospital. He should arrive around 10:30 between surgeries. Maximum impact. My hands shook. Okay. Barbara, you need to be prepared. Adam will call. He'll be angry. Don't answer. Don't engage. Let him talk to his attorney. Let everything go through proper channels now. What if he comes to my apartment? He won't, Patricia said confidently. He's too smart for that. Too concerned with appearances. But if he does, don't let him in. Call the police if necessary. The divorce filing includes a provision about harassment. Okay, I said again. Barbara, you're doing the right thing. Remember that. The process server found Adam in the doctor's lounge at the hospital. Vincent had a contact who reported back Adam had been drinking coffee, chatting with colleagues about an upcoming conference when he was handed the envelope. He'd opened it immediately. Adam never could resist knowing things right away. His face had apparently gone white, then red, then white again. "What the hell?" he'd said loudly enough that everyone in the lounge stopped talking. He'd called me immediately. I didn't answer. He called again, and again, 12 times in the first hour. Then the text started, "Barbara, what the fuck is this? You can't be serious. You're making a huge mistake. We need to talk. Now. I'm coming to wherever you're staying. You're going to regret this. Call me immediately. This is insane. You've lost your mind. Fine. Don't call. My attorney will destroy you. You have no idea what you've just done." I blocked his number. Sarah called 20 minutes later. Unblocked, she got through. "Mom, what the hell?" She was furious. "You served Dad at work. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? Everyone's talking about it." "I imagine they are," I said calmly. "This is so petty, so vindictive. I can't believe you'd embarrass him like this." "Sarah, have you read the filing?" I asked. "What? No, I just know that you—" "Read it," I interrupted. "Your father has a copy. Ask him to show it to you. Read every page, then call me back if you want to talk." "Mom!" "Read it first," I repeated and hung up. Michael called an hour later. "Mom, you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "Scared, but fine." "I talked to Sarah," he said. "She's furious with you. She hasn't read the filing yet. Dad's refusing to show her. He's claiming it's full of lies and he doesn't want to upset her." "Of course he is," I said. "I'm going over there tonight," Michael said. "To Dad's. I'm going to make him show us both. She needs to see it, Mom. She needs to know." "Be prepared," I warned. "Your father is very good at making things seem reasonable, at twisting things." "I know," Michael said, "but I also know what I saw in your evidence. I'll make sure she sees the truth." The rest of the day passed in a strange, suspended state. I tried to work on small things, unpacking more boxes in my apartment, organizing my tiny kitchen, reading a book, but I couldn't focus. My phone kept buzzing with blocked calls. Adam trying to reach me, I assumed. At 4 p.m., Patricia called again. "Adam's attorney called, Benjamin Foster. He's threatening to fight everything, claims you're making false accusations. Says they'll prove you're mentally unstable and seeking revenge for an imaginary affair." "But we have proof." "I know," Patricia said soothingly. "I told him we'd be happy to present all our evidence in court. I mentioned Gregory Shaw. I mentioned the forensic accounting. I mentioned the photographs. He got very quiet. And he said he needed to consult with his client. Translation, he's going to tell Adam that they're fucked if this goes to trial, and they should consider settling." "I don't want to settle," I said immediately. "I know," Patricia said, "but keep an open mind. Sometimes a good settlement is better than a long trial, even if we'd win. Think about it. But you don't have to decide now." At 8:47 p.m., Sarah called back. I almost didn't answer. "Mom," she said. Her voice was different, smaller. "I read it. Michael made Dad show us, and then Michael showed me the pictures, and the evidence about the money." She was crying. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't believe you. I thought you were being dramatic. But Dad's been lying to all of us. For years." "I know," I said gently. "I said such terrible things to you. About how you don't do anything, about how you're embarrassing the family. But you gave up everything for us. For him. And he threw it away." She was sobbing now. "Sarah, I said I love you. You didn't know. He's your father. You wanted to believe the best of him. But I should have believed you. You're my mother. You've never lied to me. And I assumed you were wrong. I'm the worst daughter." "Stop," I said firmly. "You're not. You're human. You made a mistake based on incomplete information. Now you have complete information and you're adjusting. That's all anyone can do." "Can I see you?" she asked. "Please, I need to see you." "Of course," I said. "Come over whenever you want." "I'm coming now," she said. "I'm leaving right now." Sarah arrived 40 minutes later. She'd been crying the whole drive. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy. She hugged me tightly, desperately, and whispered, I'm sorry. over and over. We sat on my small sofa and I held my daughter while she cried. "How could he do this?" she finally asked. "How could he treat you this way? You loved him. You did everything for him." "I did," I agreed. "But Sarah, you need to understand something. Your father didn't wake up one day and decide to be cruel. He changed gradually. Success changed him. Or maybe success revealed something that was always there, a belief that worth is measured by status and achievement rather than character and love." "That doesn't make it okay," Sarah said fiercely. "No," I agreed. "It doesn't, but it helps me understand it, and understanding helps me stop blaming myself." "I'm going to testify," Sarah announced suddenly. "In court. I'll tell them what kind of person you are, what kind of mother you've been. If they need character witnesses or whatever, I'll do it." "Sarah." "No, Mom. I want to. I need to. I need to make up for how I treated you." I kissed her forehead. "You don't need to make up for anything, but if you want to help, I'll accept it." We sat together for a long time, not talking, just being together, my daughter and I rebuilding what had been broken. Eventually, Sarah said, "What happens now?" "Now," I said, "we wait for your father to respond to the filing, and then we go to court. And then I get to figure out who I am when I'm not someone's wife." "You're going to be okay," Sarah said confidently. "Better than okay. You're going to be amazing." I hoped she was right. The Fulton County Courthouse was not what I expected. I'd imagined something imposing marble columns and hushed reverence. Instead, it was fluorescent lit and bureaucratic, with scuffed floors and too many people moving through hallways that smelled like old coffee and stress. Patricia met me outside courtroom 6D at 8:30 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in late October. 6 weeks had passed since I'd filed for divorce. 6 weeks of motions and counter-motions of discovery requests and depositions of my entire life being reduced to exhibits and testimonies. "Ready?" Patricia asked. She looked sharp in a navy suit, her silver-streaked hair pulled back every inch the competent professional. "No," I admitted. "But let's do it anyway." Inside the courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. Judge Victoria Reynolds presided from the bench, a woman in her early 60s with steel gray hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. She had the look of someone who'd heard every excuse and believed none of them. Adam was already seated at the defendant's table with Benjamin Foster. My husband of 32 years looked diminished somehow, thinner, older. His expensive suit couldn't hide the fact that he hadn't been sleeping well. Our eyes met briefly and I saw something flash across his face. Anger, yes, but also fear. Good. He should be afraid. Sarah and Michael sat in the gallery behind me. Sarah reached forward and squeezed my shoulder. "We're here, Mom," she whispered. Judge Reynolds called the court to order. "We're here for the dissolution of marriage between Barbara Morrison Winters and Adam James Winters, married August 14, 1993. This is a contested divorce with significant asset disputes. I've reviewed all filed motions and evidence. Let's begin." Patricia stood. "Your Honor, we're prepared to present evidence of adultery, financial fraud, and systematic concealment of marital assets. We have multiple witnesses and extensive documentation." Benjamin Foster stood as well. "Your Honor, my client disputes these allegations. Mrs. Winters is a woman scorned who has concocted an elaborate fantasy to punish her husband for what was at most a marital disagreement. We'll show that she abandoned the marital home without cause and is now attempting to profit from her own bad behavior." Judge Reynolds looked at him over her glasses. "Mr. Foster, I've reviewed the filed evidence, including photographs, financial records, and sworn statements from Dr. Gregory Shaw. If this is a fantasy, it's remarkably well documented. Let's hear the evidence and save the dramatics." I loved her immediately. Patricia called Gregory Shaw first. Gregory took the stand with military bearing, dressed in a dark suit, his expression somber. He was sworn in and stated his name and occupation for the record. "Dr. Shaw," Patricia began, "how long have you been in practice with Dr. Adam Winters?" 15 years. We established Peachtree Cardiovascular Surgery together in 2010. "And during that time, did you trust Dr. Winters?" "Completely. He was my partner in every sense. We built that practice together." Past tense. "Was. What changed?" Gregory's jaw tightened. "About 3 months ago, I noticed discrepancies in our financial records. Small things at first, expense reports that didn't quite add up, transfers that weren't adequately documented. I'm meticulous about finances, so it bothered me. I hired a forensic accountant to review our books. And what did that review reveal? That over the past 3 years, Dr. Winters had systematically transferred approximately $480,000 from practice accounts into a shell company he controlled. Small amounts each time, $2,000 here, $5,000 there, but it added up. A murmur went through the courtroom. Judge Reynolds made a note. Did Dr. Winters have authorization to make these transfers? No. Our partnership agreement requires mutual approval for any single transfer over $10,000 and full disclosure of all business entities. He violated both provisions. What did you do when you discovered this? I confronted him. He claimed it was deferred compensation he was owed, but when I asked for documentation, he couldn't provide any. That's when I learned about the condo, the car, and Miss Harper. Gregory's voice was tight with controlled anger. He stole from our practice to fund an affair. Have you taken action? I've filed a civil lawsuit against Dr. Winters for breach of partnership agreement and misappropriation of funds. I've also reported him to the Georgia Medical Board for financial misconduct. Patricia nodded. No further questions, Your Honor. Benjamin Foster stood for cross-examination, but he looked uncertain. Dr. Shaw, isn't it possible these transfers were legitimate business expenses that were simply poorly documented? No, Gregory said flatly. I've been in business for 30 years. I know the difference between poor documentation and theft. Foster tried a few more questions but got nowhere. Gregory was unshakable. Patricia called Karen Phillips next. The forensic accountant walked through her analysis with devastating precision. Spreadsheets were projected onto screens. Bank statements, credit card records, a complete financial autopsy of Adam's deception. In summary, Karen concluded, Dr. Winters concealed approximately $650,000 in marital assets through the shell company. He spent roughly $280,000 of those funds on his relationship with Miss Harper, rent-car gifts, vacations. Another $120,000 on personal expenses not disclosed to his wife. The remaining $250,000 is still in the hidden account. And what should have happened to these funds? Patricia asked. They should have been deposited into the family accounts as marital income. Mrs. Winters had every right to know about this money and participate in decisions about how it was used. Benjamin Foster's cross-examination was brief and ineffective. Karen had receipts for everything. Then Patricia called Vincent Taylor. The private investigator presented his surveillance evidence, dates, times, locations. Photos of Adam and Melissa entering and leaving the condo. Photos of them at restaurants shopping together, kissing in parking garages. In your professional opinion, Patricia asked, was this a casual relationship or an ongoing affair? Ongoing affair, Vincent said definitively. They had established patterns, routines. This wasn't a fling. This was a parallel life. Adam sat stone-faced through all of it. But I saw his hands clenched on the table, saw the muscle jumping in his jaw. Then Patricia did something I wasn't expecting. She called Sarah to the stand. My daughter walked to the witness box with her head high. She was sworn in, stated her name Sarah Elizabeth Winters, and her occupation attorney at law. Miss Winters, Patricia said gently, I know this is difficult. You're testifying about your father. I understand, Sarah said. Her voice was steady. But my mother deserves the truth to be told. Tell us about your relationship with your mother. Sarah looked at me, and her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't break down. My mother is the most selfless person I know. She gave up her nursing career to raise my brother and me. She moved 3 times for my father's job. She put us through school, was at every recital, and game made our house a home. She did everything right. And how did your father treat her? Sarah's voice hardened. For years I didn't see it. I was blind to it. But looking back now with clear eyes, he treated her like an employee, someone who was supposed to make his life run smoothly. He never asked about her day, never acknowledged her contributions. At family dinners, he only talked about his work and asked about our careers. Mom could have been furniture for all the attention he paid her. When did you become aware of your father's affair? When my brother showed me the evidence, the photos, the financial records. I was furious at my mother initially. I'd believed my father's version of events, that she'd overreacted, that she'd abandoned him. Sarah wiped her eyes. I said terrible things to her. I called her selfish. I accused her of destroying our family. I was so wrong. What changed your mind? the evidence. And then I found something else. My father's iPad, which he'd left at the house. His email was still logged in. I read messages between him and his attorney about how to minimize what my mother would get in the divorce, how to use her age against her, how to make her seem like a burden. Sarah's voice broke. He was so calculating, so cold. And I realized my mother had been living with this man, this stranger, for years, and none of us noticed. Do you believe your mother's claims? I know they're true, Sarah said firmly, and I'm ashamed it took me so long to see it. Benjamin Foster declined to cross-examine. What could he possibly ask? When Sarah stepped down, she walked past Adam's table. He reached out as if to touch her arm, but she pulled away. The look she gave him could have frozen fire. How could you? She said quietly, but in the silent courtroom everyone heard. She loved you. We all did. And you threw it away for what, a younger woman in a condo? Sarah, you don't understand, Adam started. I understand perfectly. Sarah cut him off. I'm an attorney, Dad. I know exactly what you did, and it's unforgivable. Judge Reynolds rapped her gavel. Miss Winters, please take your seat. Dr. Winters, you'll have your opportunity to speak through your attorney. Benjamin Foster called Adam to the stand. It was a risky move putting a defendant in a divorce case on the stand, but they didn't have much choice. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Their only hope was to make him seem sympathetic. It didn't work. Dr. Winters, Foster began. You've heard serious allegations today. How do you respond? Adam cleared his throat. He looked smaller in the witness box, less commanding. I made mistakes. I'm not denying that. But I want the court to understand the context. Please explain. I've worked my entire life to build a career. I came from nothing, poverty really. I put myself through medical school. I built a successful practice. I provided a good life for my family. His voice took on an edge. And yes, I had a relationship with Melissa Harper. Yes, I set up a separate account. But my marriage had been dead for years. Barbara had checked out. She had no interest in my career, my achievements. She was content to coast on what I'd built. I felt Patricia stiffen beside me. She was ready to object, but Judge Reynolds held up a hand. Continue, the judge said, her expression unreadable. I'm not proud of the affair, Adam said. But I was lonely. My wife had become irrelevant to my life. We barely talked. We had nothing in common. I needed someone who understood the pressures I was under, someone who could be a real partner. And the money, Foster prompted. The business account was for legitimate business purposes. Gregory is making it sound worse than it is. Yes, I should have documented things better, but everything I did was within the scope of our partnership. Patricia stood. Your Honor, that directly contradicts Dr. Shaw's sworn testimony and the partnership agreement, which is Exhibit 12C. Sustained, Judge Reynolds said. Dr. Winters, stick to facts, not arguments. Adam's face flushed. The point is, I worked hard for everything I have, and now Barbara wants half of it despite not contributing anything meaningful in years. She hasn't worked. She hasn't generated income. She's been living off my success. The courtroom was silent. I felt Sarah and Michael both go rigid behind me. Judge Reynolds leaned forward. Dr. Winters, let me make sure I understand. You're arguing that your wife of 32 years who raised your children, managed your household, and supported your career through multiple relocations and transitions, contributed nothing. Adam seemed to realize his mistake. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant, the judge said coldly. Continue, Mr. Foster. But Foster had nothing else. He knew his client had just destroyed any sympathy he might have garnered. Patricia's cross-examination was surgical. Dr. Winters, you testified that your marriage was dead for years, yet you stayed. Why? Adam hesitated. I was trying to make it work. Or were you waiting until your wife turned 65 as you wrote in an email to your attorney on February 3rd? Patricia pulled up the email on the screen. Quote, I advise waiting until after your wife turns 65. At that age, we can argue she should be satisfied with Social Security and Medicare. Is that trying to make it work? That was just exploring options. You were calculating how to minimize what your wife would receive in a divorce while continuing to steal marital funds to support your mistress. That's not exploring options. That's fraud. Adam's face went red. I didn't steal. You transferred $480,000 from your practice without your partner's knowledge into an account your wife didn't know existed. What would you call that? Business decisions. Business decisions that paid for a luxury condo, a Mercedes, and jewelry for Miss Harper. That's not business. That's theft. Foster objected weakly. Judge Reynolds overruled. No further questions, Patricia said. I think Dr. Winters has made our case for us. Judge Reynolds called a 30-minute recess to review her notes. We waited in a small conference room. Sarah held my hand. Michael paced. He buried himself, Patricia said with satisfaction. Everything he said just proved our case. What should I expect? I asked. Honestly, the best case scenario. Full equitable distribution of marital assets, alimony, and probably a punitive award for the concealed funds. When we returned to the courtroom, Judge Reynolds looked stern. I've been a judge for 18 years, she began. I've presided over hundreds of divorces. Some are sad but amicable. Some are contentious but fair. And some, like this one, reveal fundamental character failures that make me question how we raise boys to become men. Adam's attorney started to object, but Reynolds silenced him with a look. Dr. Winters, I've reviewed all the evidence, the photographs, the financial records, the testimony of your business partner who you betrayed, the testimony of your daughter who you disappointed, and your own testimony, which was perhaps the most damning of all. She looked down at her notes. You testified that your wife contributed nothing. Let me correct that misapprehension. Your wife sacrificed her career to support yours. She raised your children. She managed your household through multiple relocations. She created the stable home environment that allowed you to focus entirely on your career. Without her contributions unpaid, unrecognized, undervalued, you would not have achieved the success you now enjoy. Her labor was invisible to you, but it was essential. Adam looked like he'd been slapped. Furthermore, you systematically concealed marital assets, engaged in ongoing adultery, funded by marital resources, and planned to divorce your wife in a manner calculated to minimize her financial security. This court finds such behavior reprehensible. Judge Reynolds pulled out a document. Here is my ruling. First, the marital home in Buckhead will be sold. Proceeds will be split 60-40, with Mrs. Winters receiving 60% to compensate for her contributions and your misconduct. Patricia squeezed my arm. Second, all disclosed marital accounts will be divided equally. Mrs. Winters will receive $35,000 from joint savings and checking. Third, the $250,000 remaining in the Cardio Wellness Investments account will go entirely to Mrs. Winters as compensation for concealed marital assets. Adam's face went white. Fourth, Dr. Winters will pay Mrs. Winters $230,000 for his expenditures on the extramarital affair. This represents reimbursement for marital funds spent on Miss Harper. Fifth, Dr. Winters will pay alimony of $4,000 per month for 10 years, subject to review if Mrs. Winters remarries or Dr. Winters' income changes significantly. Sixth, Mrs. Winters will retain all assets received through inheritance from her father, as these are separate property and not subject to division. Finally, I'm ordering Dr. Winters to pay Mrs. Winters' legal fees in the amount of $45,000. Patricia was rapidly calculating on a notepad. She showed me the total, approximately $630,000 cash plus my father's properties. I was going to be fine, more than fine. Do either party wish to appeal this decision? Judge Reynolds asked. Benjamin Foster conferred with Adam, who looked shell-shocked. No, Your Honor, Foster finally said. Very well. This marriage is dissolved. We're adjourned. Outside the courthouse, Sarah and Michael enveloped me in a hug. Both were crying. I was too. You did it, Mom, Michael said. You really did it. We did it, I corrected, looking at both my children. Thank you for believing me, for standing with me. Sarah wiped her eyes. I should have believed you from the beginning. I'm so sorry. Stop, I said gently. You're here now. That's what matters. Adam emerged from the courthouse with Benjamin Foster. He looked broken, aged. When he saw us, he stopped. For a moment, we just stared at each other. 32 years of history in that look. Barbara, he said quietly. Can we talk? No, I said simply. We have nothing more to say to each other. Our attorneys will handle the property sale and asset transfer. I never meant to hurt you, he said, and I realized something. I believed him. Not because it was true, but because he genuinely couldn't see how his actions had hurt me. To Adam, I'd always been a supporting character in his story, and supporting characters don't have feelings that matter. Goodbye, Adam, I said. I hope someday you'll understand what you lost. Not the money, not the house, but the years we could have had as real partners if you'd ever bothered to see me as a person. I turned and walked away. Sarah and Michael walked with me. Patricia followed already on her phone, arranging the next steps. Behind us, Adam stood alone on the courthouse steps. I didn't look back. 3 months later, I was sitting in a classroom at Emory University, surrounded by students half my age, taking notes on Renaissance art history. At 63, I was the oldest student in the program. I was also the happiest. The house in Buckhead had sold quickly. Atlanta's real estate market was strong. My share combined with the court award and my father's trust meant I had financial security for the rest of my life. More importantly, I had freedom. I'd kept one of my father's properties, the little house in Decatur where I'd grown up. I'd moved back in, renovating it slowly, making it mine. The other properties continued generating rental income. I'd hired a property manager to handle the details. I'd enrolled at Emory's evening program for adult learners, pursuing the art history degree I'd dreamed of 40 years ago. My classmates thought I was brave. I thought I was finally living. Sarah visited every Sunday for brunch. Michael came by for dinner most Wednesdays. We were rebuilding our relationships, learning to be adults together rather than mother and children. They rarely saw their father. Adam had been suspended from the medical board for a year, pending investigation of the financial misconduct. Gregory Shaw's lawsuit was ongoing. Melissa Harper had left him when his finances collapsed. Apparently, a struggling doctor wasn't as appealing as a successful one. Adam had moved into a small apartment in East Atlanta. He worked part-time doing consultations, making enough to live on, but nothing like his previous income. He'd aged dramatically. Sarah reported that he looked 10 years older. I felt sorry for him in a distant way, but mostly I felt free. One Saturday afternoon in January, I was at the High Museum of Art, one of my favorite places in Atlanta. I was standing in front of a Monet, completely absorbed, when someone spoke beside me. "Beautiful, isn't it, the way he captures light?" I turned. A man perhaps mid-60s with kind eyes and silver hair, distinguished looking in a comfortable professorial way. "It is," I agreed. I never get tired of looking at his work. "Are you an artist yourself?" "Student," I said. "Art history. I'm a late bloomer." He smiled. "The best kind. I'm Richard Hayes. Retired art history professor, actually. I volunteer here as a docent." "Barbara Morrison," I said, offering my hand. I'd reclaimed my maiden name. Winters belonged to someone else's life. We talked for 30 minutes standing in front of that Monet. About art, about Atlanta, about the joy of learning new things at any age. It was easy, comfortable conversation. The kind I hadn't had in years. When I finally said I needed to go, Richard handed me a card. "We do a lecture series here first Tuesday of every month. Guest speakers, usually professors or artists. You might enjoy it." "I might," I said, taking the card. "And Barbara, if you ever want a private tour of the collection, I give excellent tours. No charge for fellow art lovers." I smiled. "I might take you up on that." As I walked out of the museum into the winter sunlight, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades: possibility. Not the desperate hope of fixing something broken, but the quiet excitement of beginning something new. I'm 63 years old. Some people would say my life is more than half over. I prefer to think of it as finally beginning. I wake up in my small house in Decatur, my father's house, my house, and make coffee exactly how I like it. I sit in the garden he planted, and I tend reading or sketching or just watching the birds. I go to classes where I'm learning about things that fascinate me, not things that serve someone else's needs. I have coffee with classmates in their 20s who treat me as a peer, not a relic. I have dinner with my children who've learned to see me as a person, not just a mother, who ask about my day, my thoughts, my dreams. I don't have a husband. I might date again someday. Richard has asked me to that lecture series 3 times now, and I'm considering saying yes, but I'm not in a hurry. For the first time in my adult life, I'm not defined by my relationship to someone else. I'm not Adam's wife. I'm not Sarah and Michael's mother. I'm not the woman who hosts dinner parties or remembers everyone's preferences. I'm Barbara Morrison, artist, student, woman, whole, and that is more than enough.